Welcome and hello to another night shift. My name is Yazil. As you can see, we're gonna work with the server today. Last time we made these UI and sent the data from the client to our server. And let me start that. And this time we want to work on what happens when we click the button and we send our data. And what does the server with it? So it means we're gonna make our first plugin. As you can see here, the server answers with a login. And if I push the add user button, it answers with add user. So let's get started with that. So we're gonna write our DLL plugin for DarkRIft in Visual Studio. I opened mine already. If you don't have that, go to my website. It's yazil.de. All the way down you can find a link to the Visual Studio community download. And when you open that, you just go for new project. And here in all the stuff we need the class library. Here a name, just put in your name. I called it login plugin, and I saved it through my server's plugin source folder, and the solution name of course is also login plugin. So I find it easier to just put in this stuff and explain it then, because still my English is not as good as I would like it. So if I type and write on the same time, it's quite difficult for me. So let the magic happen. We close that and I close that, and you see there is my plugin. So for the first we need the using DarkRIft and the using DarkRIft config tools and the using DarkRIft storage. If you don't have these stuff, you can go here to your references, click on it and say add new references, and go on browse, and you find on your install directory, we go there, it's myPC data Peter across server, and there on the libs there's a DarkRIft lib and the transmission DLL. So just click on both and click check that here and say okay, and you got that. Of course I have that already. You got that here in your references, and after that you can add the using directive for DarkRIft stuff. We also go for systems. We need that later on, in the moment not, but we go also for system collections generic for our lists. So I made an namespace out of it, called it login plugin, and I got a public class login plugin, and you need to add these plugin after. So DarkRIft recognized that as a DarkRIft plugin. First of all, in every plugin you need these 5 things here, which are as essential for the plugin, which is the plugin name, the plugin version, the author, whatever you write there, an email if you want to, and here the directive for when we want to add commands into the plugin. So I open that, plugin description, I called that okay. The next, we need all variables which we gonna use in the settings file. You know the settings file already from the server itself, which says settings.cnf. For our plugin we write our own settings. So at first we need a private config reader, which is also a from the DarkRIft config tools. And I called it just underscore settings because everything private is underscore in my opinion. So you know immediately when something is private. You know these stuff already. We know the private byte underscore login t. If we go through our Unity yconst, you see there is our login t, and also I added a few more of the login subjects, which is login user success, which is user failed, and logout success, and add user success and add user failed. So you see now there are more of these subjects, so it's easier to hold them in the file than just hard code them. Close it again. So from every subjects we need to have as a variable in our plugin, and that's just to define over here. And we need two more things. A bool for is it allowed to add a user, which is on the start false, and is the debug variable true or false. So it means, do we get debug messages or not? That's for the beginning. After that, we start with the actually installation of our plugin. So we got a variable which is installed, which is also from the plugin, which we got here. No, here. Settings. And if it's not installed, then do this stuff, which is until down there. So first of all, we install the subdirectory. That means we get a new directory with the string of our plugin name and a byte, which is these here. We open the settings.cnf and put in the ASCII text, which we define here. First of all, login tag, and then the subjects, which is login user subject, login subject, logout user, add user, login successful, and so on. The /t \t means it's a tab in our file, and /n means we got a new line. And so we got a tab number 1 new line, the text tab number 2 new line, and so on. So we get everything here with the numbers. We also have in our yconst. So after we have the settings file, we try to implement our table from the database. And you remember we already installed the plugin database. And from there we need a function which is execute non-query. And that's just the query itself. So it means create a table if the table is not, it exists, and the table name is table player. And we want to have an ID of class integer, and it should be not null, and it's auto increment every time we add a new line into the database. Also, we got a username which has the length of 50 chars, also is not allowed to be null, and we got a password, also variable char size from 50, and it's also not null. Of course, a password with nothing in it makes no sense. And since we don't have any query parameters. We just add new query parameter 0 size. The whole thing we going to do in a try. So if there's an error, we get a database exception, which we catch here, and we say the interface.log error, which means on the interface, which is our server window, put in a log error, which is in red, this message, and add the exception we called here to it as a string. We also can do that if we say only debug that if we have the debug variable on, so we can do this like, and so we can only get a message if we have debug on. So that's the first step on how to create and install our plugin. And the next step in this function, we want to read the settings file, and we start with the private settings we defined above here, settings, and say that's a new configuration reader which comes from the config reader from DarkRIft, and get the subject directory, which is basically the plugin name, plus the settings.cnf. So after that, the stuff which is in the settings CNF is into the variable settings. After that, we try here to pass the settings information from the first line into the variable we defined before. If that failed, it means it's over here, then we get an error and we close DarkRIft. And that we have to do for every line in our file. So after we go through everything, we get in every variable like whatever underscore login as logout user, which means it's 1, 2 in it, and number 2, and so on. I've gone through it slowly, so you may stop the video and type it down. So the last bit over here is we don't have a new short here, we have a bool. So we try to find a low at user and put it into our bool variable, also with the debug variable. So we are safe on that part. So for the last thing in this function, we need the connection service. The connection service from DarkRIft has a few delegates, and we need to add ourselves to the delegate on server message, which happens when the client sends something to our server, which, let me see, is here in our login manager. We send here send message to server, and everything which is sent to server with this function will start an event on server message, and we just add ourselves to that. The function we want to use is on server message, and in every function we are on at that delegate, we get two parameters, which is one, the connection, which I just called can, and the message itself, which is data in my function over here. So bear with me, it's not too long anymore. We got an if statement. In the if statement, we check the data.tag which is the message we send at first. In our case, or in my case, it's the 10. And we check that if that is the same like our underscore login t. And if it's the same, we do the rest. If it's not the same, then this message is not for this plugin. So the next part is easy. We just go for data.subject and check if it's the subject we need to know. For example, the 1 is here login, the 2 is logout, and the 3 will be add user. And we also implemented here a logic for if underscore add user. So if we have in our config file an false, then you're not allowed to do that. If it's a true, we just go and log onto our server window add user. So I hope it was not too hard. And the next part, we need to go for a build and just say build login plugin. And if we did all right, what's going on here? Yes. I changed something here with the message here. But you see, build is one success, and we have to implement the DLL into our server, which is quite easy. We go on the server, plugin source, login plugin, bin, debug, and there you find your DLL. Copy that, go to the server, plugins, right, and copy that there. I just delete that here so you can see that it works. Yeah, well, go to our server. So we start our server, and you can see the login plugin is going here with the version 1. And also let's go for our Unity project. So let's see if data Peter across server plugins. As you can see, the login plugin folder is generated, and the settings.cnf also. We open that, and we can see the login tag is 10 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and allow is true and debug is true also. And yeah, we'll start our little game. We can see we are connected, and if I put login, the server gets the message server tag 10.1, and we get an answer with login. And if we push add user, we get a 10.3 and an add user. Okay. Also, we can check if the database is generated. So we go into our workbench, and if you don't see that here, you can right click on tables and refresh all. And here's our table player, and which has an ID, username, and password as we inserted there with the select. Okay, that's the stuff for today. I hope you did understand everything and had a little bit fun in doing it. That's for the night shift, and see you later on with how to response these stuff into our Unity client. Okay, happy night shift. See you.